All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our third and final Summer of Rosé series wine school. Glad to be back with everybody. And today we have a couple of very, very exciting and qualified special guests. I will start by introducing Jermaine Stone, who is started out as a musician and then carved himself out an impressive career in the world of wine, covering everything from being an auctioneer to, I guess, having a branding agency now. So you basically ticked all of my boxes of passions: music, wine, and marketing. We'll talk about that someday, not on camera. And then Chef Luda Lefebvre, who has a couple of great restaurants in Los Angeles, Petit Trois, Trois Mec, and is just a great guy and always fun to talk about food and wine with. So we're really, really happy to have both of these guys here with us today. And obviously Grant Reynolds, who is a partner in Delicious Hospitality Group and has a great wine retail shop called Parcel, hopefully from which you have bought some of the wines that we have today from our rosé wine six-pack, which you should be able to see on the right of your screen. You can purchase from there, and hopefully some of you have the wines that we have with us today. So today is all about rosé with food. And just in case this is your first one of these with us, give you a little background on why we're doing this, and what our plan is for today. So we basically, for the last three of these, have partnered up with Wines of Provence, which is an organization that represents about 650 wineries and trade companies all around the Provence region in the south of France. They basically exist to promote and advance these wines in the organization's three appellations, which is the Côte de Provence, the Côte d'Aix-en-Provence, and Côte de Valois in Provence. So three really important regions that these wines come from. And today's sort of whole focus is going to be about the wines that we have and how rosé generally pairs with food. So what we'll do is start with Grant teeing up the wines a little bit, and we'll take that from there and talk through food and rosé generally and make sure that we're kind of hitting all the important points as we talk about the wines of Provence.
Awesome. Hi, guys. Welcome back. We finally have a French person in the mix here.
Yes,
Thank
nobody
you.
quite understood me, but
Yeah.
the accent.
But yeah, so to start with, Chris, I don't know if you have any of the labels or not, but they should be pretty easy to differentiate.
So I'm going to share my screen really fast so you guys can see the wine bottles as we talk about them.
Sweet. So yeah, we're going to start with the one on the right, the Rutas, which is a pretty classic style. It's from the Côte Verrois in Provence, which is that kind of center sub-region of Provence. For those of you who were on this last week, this is a blend of 4 different grapes. It's a blend of Cinsault, it's kind of the lighter, really aromatic grape, Grenache, which is really fruity, and then Syrah and Cabernet Sauvignon, which give it some weight and some richness to it as well. So when we talk about how like the more classic, really crisp, really light, kind of straightforward but delicious style of Provence wines works with different types of food. And then we'll also go into the Clos Cibon, which is definitely probably the weirdest wine that we drank over the last couple of weeks. Still from Provence, but made in a style so that the flavors of it are a little bit different, and we'll kind of get into that.
And really quick, before we jump into them, just to remind people, there's a worksheet that I think you can see on the right of your screen that will just give you a little bit. If you want to follow along, it covers the grapes and the regions, and we'll kind of refer back and forth. But just to remind people, that's there.
Perfect. This wine's delicious. I'm drinking it very cold in a heat wave in the dark. I hope you guys are
Very easy to drink, huh?
super easy to drink.
But
I think one, when we were breaking up this whole conversation, one thing that we always, in the restaurants kind of get asked or people totally ignore, right, is what type of food to have with rosé. Or people just don't have any food with rosé, right? And it's just something that like you can drink,
Easy, yeah.
throw it back, and really enjoy it, you know, in more as like a drink than as the way in which we normally associate wine, which is of course always with food, right? And I think there's like it's great to have Ludo here to maybe walk us through some dishes. But Jermaine, I wanted to bounce it off of you, kind of the idea of like how I think rosé for a lot of people, it can be their sort of entry into wine, right? And then the next sort of phase of getting into wine is really starting to think about different types of wine and different types of foods or different types of purposes in which you know they would otherwise have them in. So I don't know what you think like about that. When we were talking earlier, you had some interesting stuff to say.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like rosé, you know, rosé is very versatile. As you mentioned, you can enjoy it on your own, on its own. But you know, it had, I think rosé has so much to do with the cultural movement of wine. You know, it being an entry level, so many entry level types of wines, it's just easy for people to grab on. Aside from that, as Ludo, I'm sure you can mention, it goes great with seafood. You know, like lobster, crab cake, salmon. It really helps to. It feeds into that lifestyle that people want to attach themselves to, and I think that's helped to push rosé along a lot in the past few years.
Yeah, so this winery, one of the reasons why we chose it too, and Ludo, it'd be great to hear you talk about maybe like transport us to Provence food wise, but the winery is on a massive estate that has everything from like olive trees to lavender fields, and they find black truffles and
Vacation.
mushrooms and all that stuff. What if we're like hanging out in Provence on a hot, sweaty day, like we're hanging out in New York? What would we be eating right now?
So I will say now what we will do. We're in the hot now, like you say, lavender, olive tree. Definitely, I will do some little grilled sardine. You know, the little fish, grilled sardine with herbe de Provence. Definitely. But the thing, guys, I make for you. I'm sorry, guys, you cannot taste it. But my favorite thing with rosé, it's called the pis saladière. That's the onion tart. Look like that. Sorry, guys, it sucks. I'll show you that like that. I don't know if you can see, but that's the tart. That's the onion tart. The pis saladière.
Oh yeah.
Damn.
Oh, yes, it's just caramelized onions with olive, anchovy, thyme, and you have rosemary. But that with a glass of rosé, guys, I will show you better. But that with a glass of rosé, you're on vacation. That's what is Provence and rosé for me. It's really vacation, the sun, the sea, the pool, all these things. You know?
I'm coming down to Sherman Oaks with my bottle later because
You should.
Whole belly that thing real quick.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if he had enough for the whole class.
Yeah, I know for you guys. I know I should send you a recipe next time. You can do it. But
Yeah, that'd be great.
it's soca. You know the little soca, the chickpea blendings we do in France. They're so thin with olive oil. That's so good. It's crispy pancake with soca, with chickpea. That with rosé for the aperitif, for the snack. The pis saladière, anchovy, olive, bruschetta of vegetable. I mean, man, south of France that's my next concept of restaurant, a restaurant of south of France. Because that's the way I want to eat now, you know, very healthy. But it's a little bit of olive oil, but very healthy food, a lot of vegetable, grilled fish. And you feel on vacation, guys. I mean, all the time I drink rosé, guys. It's just for me, vacation, south of France. It's a lot about memory for me. You've been to France?
The French idea of healthy is like a buttery onion cake. Like it's got vegetables. They're cooked in butter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Ludo,
Green juice. But
yeah, Ludo. I remember watching you at one point watching you do a demo on YouTube or something, making a bouillabaisse. And
Yeah.
I think it occurs to me also though that these wines will go really well with that kind of food that's not necessarily a summer food as well. You know, it still hits that like seafood kind of, you know, provincial origin kind of food, right?
Good fish soup, bouillabaisse, you know. My favorite place to have bouillabaisse in south of France, it's in Antibes. I don't know if you've been to Antibes, guys. You know,
Yeah.
Hotel du Cap, you know, but you have a restaurant called Bacon. It's one of the best. You've been over there, German? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I have. I love that place.
Ah ouais, okay. You go over there, you put the beads, you know, you eat your fish soup, your bouillabaisse, I mean, the fish. I mean, the whole show is just amazing. And you have a glass of rosé with that. I mean, it's just heaven, guys. I want to live over there. I mean, I love here, but I miss a lot of things. It's a lifestyle, the rosé. It's a lifestyle, man. It's really a lifestyle to drink rosé.
I knew going into this one that this was going to be like the hardest of these conversations to have because of how bad I went out of my house right now. But it's probably worse than I anticipated because we should all be out of our homes and somewhere nice. So let's talk a little bit about this specific wine and like how it might be different than you know, the other one and like how you might sort of pair each with a different meal or situation food wise. Grant, you want to talk a little bit about the Rutas here and then
So what Ludo is talking about, and Jermaine, I'm curious your thoughts on like more easily accessible than delicious French tart food. But what he's talking about is ultimately like salty foods, right? So olives or anchovies and those things, and
salty cheese, good salty cheese with that too is good.
Salty cheese, exactly. But I think why this wine works with that is that what you get in Provence, right? And we've spoken about this a couple of different times, is you always get a really high acid, a really crisp, a really dry style of rosé, right? And when we say acidity, that's like that mouth puckering kind of sensation. And you get that with champagne, you get that with like dry Riesling, which are kind of geekier wines for people to have. And you see in like almost every single tasting menu or wine pairing, you'll have champagne, and there's always some Riesling that will be paired with either like spicy foods or really salty foods. But I think the great thing about this specific one is that you get that like really crisp kind of mouth puckering sensation. But because of the Cabernet and the Syrah, it has a little bit of like fruitiness and texture to it too.
Very well with fruit, huh? And Grant, with fruit it'd be great. Like you do a feta cheese fruit salad with that.
So good.
Strawberry, feta cheese, almond, olive oil will be perfect with this wine. With the root.
But yeah, like Jermaine, what do you think? Because there's always these foods. There's like different types of foods that are ultimately kind of hard to pair with, or there's this sort of like high-low experience of like where you pair, you know, champagne or Riesling, and I would say rosé, in particular, this style of like ultra crisp, ultra you know, clean and salty style of rosé works really well with. What is some stuff that might be like a little bit easier to find than the Ludo kit, which looks amazing?
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things that I was thinking about immediately was like spiced French fries. I love spiced French fries. That would go great with this. You know, like you mentioned, it has like the light crispness of a white, but it still has that like fruitiness of a red. So, you know, that's also even like spicier seafood or spicy foods on a whole. I find this goes well with. I'm not sure if you've ever had a Jamaican beef patty before.
I literally just.
Wow, no.
A Jamaican beef patty with cocoa bread would be amazing.
Really?
With this Rutas. You know, it's spicy. It has like the cocoa bread is like nice and soft, usually fresh out of the oven. Chris, it looks like you might have experienced one of those. I feel like you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Like there's the best place in my old neighborhood, 226 and White Plains Road in the Bronx. If you're ever there, Kingston Bakery. Tell them Jermaine sent you. So yeah, definitely going with some beef patty. But I think opening it up and trying this with something spicy would really would change the perception that most people have of rosé.
Do you find that's true for most rosés, or particularly these sort of like super crisp kind of lighter ones?
The crisp and lighter ones, like the Rutas, really jumped out at me as soon as I tasted it. Yeah, crisp and lighter, definitely.
That's awesome. That's a good one. I love those pairing ideas that aren't, sort of the ones that we've all heard, especially this, you always connect place to the wine, like, that's why seafood's so common, but that's a really good one.
I like to step outside of the box.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
But yeah.
Go ahead, Grant.
So should we start to get into the second one?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, sweet. So the idea with this second one, so this is from a producer that when we put up the six pack, a handful of people hit us up asking how we got enough to sell it in a six pack. And we ran out of we sold, but the some people got the 2017, some people got the 2018, which we're speaking the same language here. But the Clos Cibon is one of those wines that I think in every like major region and across the world that makes rosé, in France, in Spain, and in Italy, there's like this kind of iconic rosé that I think really puts itself outside of the category, right? So in Spain, there's this one that's like impossible to find. Parcel, we got 6 bottles of it and it sold out, and like one person bought it, and as soon as it went up on the website, called Lopez de Heredia from Rioja. Italy, there's a couple of versions. One called Valentini that is like cult-like and super expensive. And then there's this one, the Clos Cibon, which is, one of the wines that like is sort of an essential wine on, I think, a lot of the great restaurant wine lists across New York, LA, sort of wherever. So this is always a wine that if I like saw it on the wine list, I was like, these guys know what they're doing. And I love this wine so much. The thing that I think, part of the reason what we wanted to show with you guys is that one is that rosé has the potential to age a little bit, right? Which is something that, not everybody, we were talking about this before, but most people have an obsession over like drinking the vintage that's just out. Like 2019 obviously there were some delays with everything going on in the world, but the 2019's just hit like right before the summer happens. And then by the end of the summer, the idea is that they're all sold out, and then you go into the next vintage year after year.
Yeah.
And so often they like look down upon, the wines being like a year or even 2 years older than the current release. But Clos Cibon, this wine is it's made from one grape, which is on the label, which is a really like kind of random grape from the area called Tiburon. This producer is like all organic. They're small, family-owned winery, really kind of like cult-like winery. And they work with this one grape, and then they make this wine in a style that gives it flavors that I think give it a little bit more richness and kind of earthiness that you find more in red wine. They make a little bit of red wine too. So it's just from this one grape that I've never seen like a normal red wine from this grape. It's kind of an interesting process. Like apparently it's like a terrible grape to grow because some of the grapes will get ripe, some of them will be green, and it's just really kind of hectic. Ultimately a lot of people just don't waste their time on it. But this family has been committed to the wine for so long. And then they age it for an extra year. And when they age it in a way that the wine becomes even a little bit more like umami and kind of saltier and also bigger. Oxidative is a term that gets thrown around in wine a lot, and that's when wines like age in oak. But the end result of that is kind of almost like a sort of like leather kind of earthy quality to the wine. So the Clos Cibon is super special. It's definitely not like your quintessential Provence rosé, but I think you can put it on like the short list of the great rosés in the world. And we wanted to show it just to show like how amazing this area is and how I think often rosé can just be overlooked, right? As like, yeah, it's just like it's cheap, it gets me drunk, it's easy, but really showing that like just how special this area is for grapes, for food, and kind of culturally speaking, it's really had this pretty amazing history. You guys get that when you taste it? It's like compared to the Rutas, it's so much different. It's much more like a red wine, I think, in a lot of ways.
The first time I opened the bottle, Grant, I was thinking the rosé was a little oxidized, a little bit, but not at all. I mean, the rosé, when you open the bottle after you breathe, it's just like almost to drink a light, I don't know, maybe not red wine, but it's so unique. Seriously, the flavor. I mean, when I show the bottle to my sommelier, she said, "Oh my God, chef, that's my favorite rosé." My sommelier was so excited because this rosé is so unique. It's so unique. I really recommend to people to try that because it's so unique. And with food, I mean, you do a little grilled lamb with herbe de Provence with that, a lamb lollipop. It's just so good. Some lamb with that.
Lamb lollipop?
Oh yeah, with herbe de Provence on the barbecue. Beep, 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 beep. Yeah. Little spice for German. Spice, okay, we put some piment.
I like that spice. Need the spice.
It is the spice, I know. French food, we don't put spice. I know, German. We don't put spice. I know. I do now.
I love that brine too, though.
Okay. No, this rosé, people need to try that. It's so unique. It's really so unique, this flavor. It's just...
as soon as you open the bottle, like the aromas just punch you in the face right away. No, it's really good. It's unique. It's like funky, but it still has those, like once it opens up, it just has those classic rosé beautiful characteristics.
I mean, so what else might go with this? Because I think sometimes those sort of funkier and just wines that are a little bolder can be more intimidating when you think about how to navigate around food. What else would you guys think would go really well with this wine?
Charcuterie, a lot of charcuterie. Sorry, German, sorry.
Oh, no, please.
Sorry about that, sorry. Charcuterie, for sure, charcuterie. A lot of meat, dry meat. And I will do a little vegetable stuff from France. What, Grant?
I'm just translating.
Thank you. Here we go. So here we go. Let me make sure to my accent. Here we go.
Right, you're going somewhere with vegetables to go with the charcuterie plate. What else is going to be on there?
In France, we do the little petit farci. Very little vegetable, and we stuff with meat. That would be perfect too with this wine. The little, we call that petit farci. Petit farci, like stuffed vegetable, because we stuff with meat, with veal. It's so good. Or you do a daube, like a beef stew, like we do with red wine, and olive and red wine.
This with some
spice.
This with some Iberico ham would be amazing.
Yeah, wow, man, you go very high. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. This would be. I mean, listen. If we're gonna go, that's where we go.
Absolutely.
Part of the ham with that, definitely. I can see that. Yeah, would it taste that? Yeah, definitely. But we can also do chocolate. I see for dessert also chocolate with that. Like a little dry prosciutto with chocolate on the toast. I mean, it's just like chocolate, and this wine would be great too. Just for dessert too, it'd be great.
Sure.
That's a good speed bump wine too. Jermaine, I'm sure you like when you were working in auctions and drinking the greatest wines in the world, like on a nightly basis, you have these like big marathon dinners, right? And you need like whether it's champagne or like a crisp glass of something to kind of reset. I feel like this would be a great wine, like if you're really having, whether it's like a big Thanksgiving meal, or our first night out of the pandemic where everybody's like eating and going hard. This is a great wine, like between white and red, that could hang with like the great wines of the world too, as something kind of thoughtful within that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, how many rosés can you really throw some age on? You know,
Yeah.
this is great, man. I mean, this was the first one that I opened. I was blown away.
Me too. The first one too. Something. Yeah. We love it. A good duck. You can do a good duck with that too. Duck and berries. You know, in France we cook a lot of duck and meat with berries. We can really do also a good gastric sauce with berries with that.
How do I cook duck?
Huh?
How do I cook duck? I just
You can go on barbecue or just roasted in the oven with a little bit butter or olive oil.
I wish I would
Make the things crispy. Yeah, but a good duck, I see a good duck with that too. You know, seriously, like good meat with this wine. More meat with that. You know.
I think what's great about this wine is it's a really good way to sort of demonstrate again that it doesn't always have to be these kind of summery foods, that you can move into things you might more commonly associate with winter or colder times. Last time we talked a lot about how rosé can be such a good Thanksgiving wine and how it can kind of drop into the meal anywhere, because I think it does tend to pair well with, poultry and things like that as well. So I think that's what's.
But this wine for Thanksgiving, why not? With the turkey or with the, how you call it, the turkey dunking?
Turducken?
Yeah, turducken, guys. Yeah, with turducken with that,
Do
guys.
people actually eat those though? I feel like that's just like a thing for the internet that never actually happens.
Really? You never tried that? It was amazing. Actually, somebody sent me one. I tried it. It was pretty interesting.
All right. Well, yeah. Pair your turducken with rosé for sure. Ludo, what do you when you guys are doing service, or when you're thinking about talking to people in the restaurant about wines? Do you find that people are often sort of surprised by the fact that rosés might work with certain? I feel like a lot of times, kind of to your point, Jermaine, like people don't think of rosé always immediately when they think about the full course meal, and especially at a restaurant that might have a bunch of sort of complex flavors and things like that. Do you guys, Ludo, do you find that people are do they ask for it and think of it to pair with food, or do you have to do a little more education?
I mean, the summer, I'll be honest with you, the summer at the restaurant, when people see rosé on the list, on the wine pairing, they order rosé. Especially the summer, people are really into rosé. And me too. I mean, the summer is rosé. It's like the season with fruit, with vegetable. The summer, here we go, guys. The season is here. It's time for rosé. Rosé all day. That's what it is. So the summer is very easy to sell rosé. But the winter a little less. I would say the rosé is more a seasonal wine for people. But you can drink that all year. It pairs very well with food. And people think rosé just most of the time for aperitif, but it's not true. You can have a whole meal with rosé. You can have meat with rosé, but most of the time people think it's just for aperitif. In south of France, we drink rosé for aperitif. And the whole menu, I mean, like go to the appetizer, to the dessert, But you need to a little bit to educate people a little bit about rosé, because people don't know that much about rosé, not that much. It's something new for people. It's something new for. I think maybe I'm wrong, Grant, but I think like people. It's so much rosé around the world now. It's so much rosé.
It's a weird thing that doesn't always like fit into the category of wine. Right,
Yeah,
it does the same thing. With people, it's just like rosé, and then you'll go into wine. Whereas I feel like, especially in Provence, and there might only be like a couple of examples in other parts of the world to where these are serious, like they're wines that can really only be grown and made in this special place, right? They have a really distinct and really unique flavor, and that's like what's so exciting about wine, right? That's like what keeps us into it. So like, it's not that if what kept us into it was just getting drunk, then like we'd have an actual problem. But the thing that keeps it interesting are all these like little subtleties to where you can kind of geek out on like, wow, this rosé tasted really different. Somebody asked in the Q&A which are my favorites, and I think we saved my two favorites for the end. That wasn't my decision, but I think like I love the Closey bone because it's something that like you can just dig into and it changes, and it's like there's so much going on in there. And then the Rutas, like I love as just being a wine to drink on the beach and just kind of throw it back.
Wine for all day, but definitely, Grant, I agree. Rutas is something all day, easy to drink.
Yeah.
Circumstance.
I feel like the Rutas is a great example of like a classic rosé. Like this is what you sign up to rosé to get, and it's really good. Perfect for a hot day. I was gonna mention when we were talking a little bit about pairings, like it goes great with so much brunch food. I think that's why rosé has become like the wine of brunch. There's this and mimosas, but it's like you get what you want out of a white and what you want out of a red in a rosé. So it goes with so many different things. But no, man, that is you gotta love rosé, dude. Gotta love it.
Jamen, on the boat in south of France, you know what I mean? In Saint-Tropez, on the boat, Rutas all day.
Yeah.
All day.
That's what it tastes like.
Yeah, it's what it tastes like.
One thing, Jermaine, maybe you can talk a little bit about this too. I mean, you're someone who's clearly very plugged into culture. I forgot at the beginning to tee up that you actually not only were a musician for a long time, but you have a great podcast called Wine and Hip Hop, and obviously tons of great guests. Something you guys should all check out. But we kind of touched on it a little bit. But I think one thing that's been interesting, for us, the Infatuation, because we have an audience of people who range who span the sort of novice to expert in terms of wine, but a lot of people who are still discovering, their own journey. And to your point, plenty of them start with rosé. And, Grant and I talk kind of ad nauseum in these wine schools about natural wine and how that's become such a trend for people. And I think some of that is because there's so much interest in, I always feel like with natural wine, there's all these stories about like, oh, it's these two brothers in Mexico and they don't even know what the grape is, but they make wine and it's great, right? But I think what's cool about, especially these, the wines of Provence, is that you have a lot of that same stuff at play. And so I think, Jermaine, do you think, are you seeing people kind of move through their process and dig more into, wanting to learn about the provenance of the wine and the people behind it?
Yes, definitely. I think that's a big part of what we've tried to cover on Wine and Hip Hop. Getting people into the stories. It's hard to. Not everyone thinks about the soil type, and the slopes. Like not everyone is thinking about that. So for me, I try to find people's entry point. Try to find what it is that where does your level of enjoyment start. And for so many people, it was, for me even, it was like how it paired with food. But with looking at that on the podcast, we really try to give a lot of insight that you wouldn't get when you're generally researching wine. Sometimes you might fall in love with the story of the winemaker, and that makes you pay a little bit more attention to the region. Maybe this was a tough vintage for them, and you had that vintage, and that's what got you in. So now, I just think overall wine has become cultural currency. The more you know about it, the more cool you are, the more people want to hang out with you. So I mean, it's one of the reasons I hang out with Grant. Like he knows.
I was gonna say this is serving Grant well in his life so far.
My dog out here for a long time looking at the sunset. So
no, but I think that rosé is a lot of people's entry points, similar to how Riesling have been people's entry wine for such a long time. But now, because of what rosé means culturally, I think that's changing.
Absolutely. And Lula, what does rosé mean to Provence? I mean, that's the whole point of these discussions, right? It is the home for these wines.
For me, rosé, it's really vacation. It's really to go. When I was a kid, guys, it was really to go to vacation, spend time with my family, with my friend. Like I say, go to the beach, drink rosé all day, with my grandpa. I remember my grandpa always order a mussel and frites for lunch, and with this bottle of rosé. So he always drink. I know if you know that, Grant, you're gonna be mad with that, but he loved Domaine Hot.
Of course.
He loved Domaine Hot. It's a very fancy rosé, a little expensive. Very, very, very light rosé. But for me, rosé, like I say, like guys, it's vacation. It's so much memory for me with my family, with my friend, and sometimes too, you go to pink wine. It's a nightclub too. Two guys, give me a bottle of pink wine.
See, for me, when I think rosé, I think Rick Ross, the rapper.
Okay. Okay.
Because Rick Ross, his nickname is Ricky Rose.
Yeah.
So since about 2010, he's been promoting Rose and just being him, just being himself, Ricky Rose. You think, and he was talking about Rose Champagne, but again, if I'm hearing Rose 30 times on this song that I listen to every day, and then I sit down and look at a menu and I see a rosé section and there's like 3 of them there and that's affordable, it's so easy to just jump to that.
Yeah, I mean, this is like your sweet spot of expertise, I think, but it's so amazing to see how much of a role popular culture plays in this world, so many others as well. But, we've been talking a lot about how clearly, music has a big role, but there's, we talk a lot about right now how like LeBron James is one of the biggest wine influencers in the world and helping people discover wine and learn things about it. And I think that's been super interesting to watch, especially recently, kind of happen more and more. But any other thoughts around it seems like wine is also, it's been a part of hip hop culture for a while, but are you seeing an increase in that as well lately?
Definitely. I think hip hop is getting older. Hip hop, I think about, I'll be 36 next week, right? And I think about what I should be drinking at that age. Hip hop has turned into a 36-year-old adult. It's older than I am, but hip hop is there. So the people that are consuming hip hop now, that's what they're drinking. So you look at a guy like Snoop, his fans are, in their late 30s, some of them early 50s. Same thing with Jay-Z, same thing, Snoop, who just recently released a wine brand. Same thing with Raekwon. Raekwon is 50 years old. He has a wine brand. So I think that it's due to the maturity of hip hop now and the fact that there is so much of an older presence. But absolutely, there's a lot more wine in hip hop these days. There's even a cool podcast named Wine and Hip Hop.
That's what I heard. That is what I heard. That's awesome. Well, yeah, I think, I just want to remind people as well, we're going to do some Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, please tee them up. But I think also just Grant, I think one thing that's come up a lot that we get questions about are wines. We've obviously gone through a bunch of them now, but rosés to look for. I think there's so many producers in Provence, and so it's tough to say like, here's 5 of them that you should go seek out. But what about just like other things that people should use to guide themselves as like if they're sort of doing a dinner party and they're we've obviously covered a lot of different things they can make and pair with rosé, but maybe just some thoughts for any of you on like how to approach going into a wine shop or sitting down at a restaurant like one of Ludo's and sort of getting some direction on what to ask for and what to look for.
Yeah, as far as rosé, I think, there is like a seal of approval based on where any wine in the world comes from, right? Like that's where the great regions, whether you see like Barolo on a label, what's up. If you see like that it's from Burgundy, you know what it's going to be. And, as far as rosé goes, Provence is like a great example of that. I think, it's like, it's the question that we'll always, it's the sort of the endless question of how do I figure out like what to order on a wine list. And I would say that, you know, for me, more and more, the thing that is like most important is to just figure out what you're looking for in that moment, right? And having like one or two descriptors, or like a wine that you really like to be able to describe to people, right? So if I were to like take and say real quick, like how do I describe the Rutas? How do I describe the like Clos Bone, so that if it's not that wine, I can get something similar to it, right? What I would say is like for the Rutas, I want a totally dry, crisp rosé that's like not too fruity, and is kind of salty and fresh. Right, it's straightforward. As whereas the Clos Bone, I think, is definitely something to where you're like, cool, I want to try something weird and different, and I want, you know, to have like a wine experience kind of within that realm. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that helps.
You know, I remember early on, you like just being able to nail down like one or two things that you've liked in the past, and just saying like, yeah, I want a light red wine that's like a little earthy. If you say that to us, well, I promise, you know, we'll be able to get you a bunch of different options that fall within that camp. So
Cool.
if you like one of these versus the other, and you want to try something else, like for the Rutas, just say, I want like classic Provence style, crisp,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
low alcohol, really refreshing, you know, and we should be able to figure that out. For the Clos Bone, you know, just saying that I want something like funky, little earthy, salty, style of rosé, then somebody will steer you in that direction too.
Well, that's all right. So that's very helpful. But obviously, the unfortunate reality is that most of us are home all the damn time now. So let's each of you choose a go-to delivery order to pair with one of these wines.
Ooh,
Mm.
great question.
Ooh.
I'll go first.
No, he's gonna say that.
I will go for the Rutas. I'd love to pair the Rutas with some Wingstop. It's a guilty pleasure, but they they have spiced fries, and they also have spicy chicken. So, you know, like I mentioned, something this light, this crisp, be cool with something spicy. I had Wingstop last night. I'm wishing that I had this wine with it. So yeah, I'll go with that.
Cool, good one.
Ludo,
Ludo, you're up.
I will take the Rutas and I will pair it with, I mean, we have a fried chicken restaurant, and I will do like a Herbe de Provence, south of France, fried chicken dish with that. I'm just obsessed with fried chicken. Chicken is crispy. Put some Herbe de Provence with that. It's a bit greasy. Yeah, I would definitely go out the box and not Provençal food, but really with. I live in America. I will go with fried chicken, with a lot of dry herbs from south of France and a little spice, piment d'Espelette. Yes, I will do that. This with the
Cool.
Ruta, definitely. Oh yeah, man. I'm obsessed with fried chicken.
I think I watched a video of you cooking it recently, actually.
Yeah.
Was that on Instagram?
Yeah. Instagram on my.
If you're not following Ludo, he's done a bunch of great home cooking demos over the last few weeks, and they're very entertaining.
Yes.
Couldn't recommend them more.
But
All
definitely,
right,
yeah.
Grant, you're up.
I want shrimp cocktail with the Brutas.
Yeah.
And then I would have like with the Clos Bone, just because I've tried to make it several times and it's just never as good. I would have like pork fried rice with the Clos Bone, which is also good.
Grant?
Like if I'm like painfully hungover, That is my all-time greasy food. Is
Really, so cool.
going to get fried rice.
Oh, yeah, makes sense. Oh, yeah, a bit foie gras,
The
yeah.
hell out of, like New York City restaurants that
You
would
like
serve delicious
what foie
things.
gras? What foie gras? What?
I want to eat some great fried rice in Chinatown.
Oh, is
No, and we're not allowed to right now.
My pick is going to be, because we actually did this last night, and I did it with some rosé and some white, but we tried our hand at making spicy tuna hand rolls, and
Whoa.
it actually worked out well, and with rosé, very good.
yeah.
That's going to be a move that I repeat for the however many weeks I'm still stuck in quarantine. So
That was the first time I got food poisoning. Is a friend of mine, his dad tried to make sushi in upstate New York. We weren't drinking rosé, sadly, and yeah, and I got real sick. So
all right, well, don't let that, for the people watching, don't let that stop you. Cool. All right. Well, look. So we have some questions, but there's actually a poll. I can't see it, but I'm told you guys can right now, that we're going to put up and ask the audience, which is basically a multiple choice of which sounds most appealing to pair with rosé, and each of you are going to give your answer as well. So here's the multiple choice options, and we'll start with Grant. We'll go backwards this time and start with Grant and end with you, Jermaine. But all right, so which one sounds most appealing to pair with rosé? A is rack of lamb, B is roasted figs and honey ice cream, C is salmon ceviche with coconut milk, and D is fresh goat cheese and veggies. Grant, what do you got? There should have been all of the above, but you got to pick one anyway.
yeah. What was the ice cream program?
That was roasted figs and honey ice cream.
If I drink like both of these bottles, that would be my vote. In like, I'm gonna go. Ludo caught me with the lamb.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I think rosé can hang with like good lamb lollipops.
Good lamb, but need to be medium rare. Pink lamb. Pink lamb.
Pink lamb.
The lamb pink, folks.
Pink
Ludo,
lamb.
is that your answer as well?
Yeah, pink lamb. Yeah.
Pink lamb. Okay. Man, I feel like I should give you a write-in, because you're the one that's like the unexpected but great answer.
I'm an outside of the box kind of guy, but no, I think I'd go with the salmon ceviche. That sounds awesome.
With coconut?
Yeah, I go with that. Screw it.
And the audience answer, let's see if it's going to come in now. Hold on, it's coming in real time. Technology here. 36% said fresh goat cheese and veggies. Interesting.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
That's like
throw it on the menu, Ludo.
Yeah, exactly. I'm taking note now.
We were wrong.
that'll be your next one. Fried chicken. You're going to a goat cheese restaurant.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's the lightning round portion, but we did have a couple other questions that I want to circle back to, just so that we can cover some things. One of them was how long, and Grant, you can take this one. How long can you age that 2017 Close Your Bone?
I was I know people who have had this wine from the 80s, and had to be super fresh. So I think the technical aspects of this wine, what the producer does to it, allows it to be able to age for a really long time. I'm not saying you need to age it for 30 years, but you could definitely age it 5-10 years, and the wine will get really interesting. All of those kind of nutty, kind of funky flavors will just start to accentuate themselves after a certain time. For sure.
And that actually tees up a question. We kind of covered some of it, but it's worth reiterating. So what is it that gives that wine specifically those funky, nutty flavors?
Yeah. So with the Rutas, right, and I would say with a large majority of Provence Rosé, and this is the idea is to make the most refreshing wine possible, right? So if it's from Provence, it's got to be dry. It's usually always like light in color, and then there's certain grapes which they have to use, which when blended make this really just delicious but also refreshing style of rosé. So the way that Closy Bone manipulates it is that they age the wine for a year in these really large oak barrels that are like so big they would fill up like a studio apartment in New York. It's like fill that thing up with rosé and let it age for a year. And what happens when it ages in barrel versus aging in like stainless steel tanks is that a little bit of oxygen kind of comes into the wine, and that changes the wine from being really fruity and floral to making it more like umami and salty and kind of funky. And then they let it do that for a year, and it's kind of like if you've ever had like a really soft cheese that has like this bloomy rind to it, right? So where it can be like a little, it's almost kind of dusty. That ultimately, like what cheese is it's just different types of like yeast and bacteria that don't make you sick but change the flavor. So this producer for this particular wine, which is like from the oldest vines in the vineyard and the best fruit, they allow this bacteria to go over the barrel, and that gives it some of that almost like sherry like characteristic to it. So it's all about like the winemaking, and then also the reason that they can make it in this way is because the area in which it's grown really just produces such fantastic grapes. But it's really specific to this producer that causes it to be able to age in that way.
Cool. Yeah, the sherry comparisons I think helpful, especially for if you don't have it, you can kind of imagine that kind of oxidized taste.
Yeah, exactly. That's the taste ultimately.
Cool. Couple other just ideas around, somebody had brought up, I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but après ski being a great time to drink rosé, which someone who grew up in Colorado, I had never thought of that, but next time I'm skiing, I'm going to do that instead of a Coors Light. What are some other cold weather either activities or opportunities that one might choose to pair with rosé? Jermaine, you have any ideas?
Let's see, cold weather activities.
Or fall, or just it could be just as simple as sitting by a fireplace.
Oh man. Well, my favorite thing to do in cold weather is let's see, cold weather activities. I'd celebrate Christmas with that would be the cold weather activity I'd go with. Now, I mean, this is something that I think about a meal with this, it's so I would want to share this with friends and family. So I'd go with enjoying it for Christmas.
Love that. I think that's one thing we're trying to do with this whole thing too, is just to encourage people to not, put that sort of like framework, like it's got to be, certainly rosé and the summer go together inherently, but I think, trying to get people to think a little bit more freely about, you can drink this any time of year is important. So that's a good answer.
I have a ton of friends that are year-round rosé drinkers. Like there's a small community campaigning for it. It's happening.
Good to hear. Ludo, I have a question for you that came from the audience, and I think it just might be a clear indication that you're going to need to cover it on your Instagram stories, but can you share your pissaladier recipe?
Yes, of course. Okay, guys, I work a long time on this recipe, but yes, of course. Let me know where to send it, of course.
Will you just, for the people in the audience that don't know what that is, will you quickly lay out what the pissaladier is?
Yeah, the pissaladier. So pissaladier is like an onion tart we're doing in south of France.
Which you showed us.
Yeah, we show us. It's like caramelized onions, cooked slowly for a long time, and we do like a pâte brisée, tourné with layer and anchovy and olive and thyme and herbs. And that, guys, I'll show you one slice and we'll start a slice. It's really for me south of France. I want my rosé with that. Look at this, guys. I don't know if you can see, but
yeah, it looks amazing.
You have a,
Where are you? I can.
Yeah, man, I'm not that far. I'm in America, in Los Angeles.
You know what? I'm on a flight.
Okay, good. I mean, I will be happy to cook for you, bro. Yeah, we have a good bottle of Burgundy together. I'm from Burgundy. No problem.
I'm ready for those days to return.
You know, I was thinking about, you know, if you in the cold, you know, you want to drink rosé, I will definitely do a cheese fondue, guys.
Oh,
Like a
that's cool.
good cheese salty fondue with a lot of dry ham and prosciutto and bread, and it will be good too, you know, a good fondue, cheese fondue with rosé. I can see that. I can test that, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So last question. This one's squarely for Jermaine. Pair a song with a glass of rosé. What's the song that would best pair in your mind with a glass of rosé?
So I'll go with one that we had today. I'll go with the Closey Bone specifically. You know, it's something a little bit funky, but it's also smooth. It is age-worthy, something you want to hang on to. So I'm gonna go with Jay-Z, Picasso Baby.
Oh.
Now, Picasso Baby it's a very funky beat. You know, it's not a regular Jay-Z beat, but he does what Jay-Z does over it, which is, you know, be an immaculate MC. But it was a very funky beat, and it's age worthy. He's talking about Picasso. He's talking about generational wealth and, you know, buying cool things. So this wine is age worthy. I'm gonna go with Picasso Baby. This is my Picasso tonight.
Great answer. That's awesome. Well, look, I think that's a perfect place for us to end. Jermaine, Ludo, thank you guys so much for joining us for this one. It was great. We're gonna do more of these. I think we're gonna figure out how to keep this going. This is the last wine school that's on the schedule now, but they've been so much fun, and really appreciate you guys joining us for this one. Thank you to the Wines of Provence for partnering with us on this. It's also been great to dig into rosé and specifically the Wines of Provence and help people learn about them and to try a bunch. Remember that you can order the 6-pack from Parcel still, and please go ahead and do that. And listen, I mean, clearly there's a bunch of wine and hip hop episodes to go and download and listen to. So please go do that. And please, if you're in the Los Angeles area, go visit our friend Chef Ludo at Petit Soir, Ludo Bird, or any of his other restaurants. I'm sure he would be more than happy to see you and serve up a glass of rosé. Thank you guys so much. See everybody soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.